Action movies have left a massive mark on pop culture. If you're watching this, chances are you like them too. Maybe you're into modern hits like John Wick with its relentless gunfights and brutal choreography. Or maybe you're more old school, preferring The Matrix, watching Neo and Trinity take down agents in slow motion. Now, while these films are iconic and both star Keanu Reeves, they likely wouldn't exist without one man, John Woo. This legendary director pioneered a style of action I like to call gun fu, blending stylized shootouts with over-the-top violence. His influence didn't just shape Hollywood, it bled into video games too. Anytime you see a character wielding dual pistols, driving through the air in slow motion and mowing down waves of enemies, you can bet there's some John Woo DNA in there. And that brings us to today's game. A developer inspired by John Woo's films set out to bring gun fu to gaming, creating a title that not only earned critical acclaim, but also helped define an entire genre. Welcome to episode 3 of the Rockstar Takeover. Today we're roaming through New York with Max Payne. First off, I just want to say thank you. This channel has officially hit 4,000 subs, and we're now less than 6,000 away from reaching my goal of 10,000 subs by the end of this year. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome aboard. In case you didn't know, I'm hosting the Rockstar Takeover in anticipation of Grand Theft Auto 6, as well as the Mortal Kombat Takeover, where I'll be covering Mortal Kombat titles leading up to Mortal Kombat 2, the movie. So be on the lookout for Rockstar and Mortal Kombat retrospectives coming to a channel near you. Now let's dive into this. Before we even think about talking about Rockstar and Max Payne, we need to take a step back. There are two key pieces to this puzzle: a little company called Remedy Entertainment and a man named Sam Lake. Let's start with Remedy Entertainment. Back in the 90s, there was a subculture known as the demo scene. To give you a quick rundown, after the rise of home computers in the 80s, a creative movement emerged where programmers, artists, and musicians crafted non-interactive multimedia presentations, simply called demos. These were small, self-contained programs that pushed the limits of real-time audiovisual effects, often showcased and competed at events known as demo parties. It was in this underground scene that a group of friends came together. Samuli Savayoko, Marcus Maki, Sammy Nopanin, John Kavalif, and Sammy Vanatalo. They shared a passion for programming and were inspired by Finland's first major game studios, Bloodhouse and Terramacue. Determined to make their mark, they founded their own company, Remedy Entertainment. Now, since these guys were still young and just starting out, they set up shop in the basement of Savayoko's parents' house. But Remedy didn't stay small for long. As the company grew, they brought in more talent, including Petri Yarvalito, a name that will come up again soon. With their team in place, Remedy got to work on their first official game, a racing game. To get things rolling, they pitched the idea to a man named Scott Miller. Keep that name in mind. He'll be important later when we dig deeper into Max Payne. Moving on, Miller provided some much needed insights on the game, and from there it was rebranded as Death Rally. During development, the team realized they needed some help with the game's text, and this is where Yarvalito comes back into the picture. He knew just the right person to call, a friend who could help bring their vision to life. That man was Sam Lake. Now let's talk a little bit about Sam Lake, because he played a crucial role in this game's development. Born in Helsinki, Finland, Lake was studying English literature at the University of Helsinki while Remedy was still in its early days. His background in literature made him the perfect person to craft the text for Death Rally. After working with Remedy on the project, he decided to stick around, signing on permanently as one of their writers.
This was the mid-90s, and it was still at that time possible for a handful of individuals to actually make a video game or a computer game by themselves, and a kind of a top-notch game at that. So it was an ambitious dream even then, but something that was within the reach. At the time, Death Rally was already running along, and I was studying the English language and literature at the university. And one of the guys at Remedy contacted me and asked me to write the texts for the game. Back then, it was kind of a limited tool set. It was this and this many letters on 3 lines, and you need to do things within that scope. I knew I wanted to write professionally, but suddenly being able to kind of do a project like this, it was a very, very fun thing.
Now that we're all caught up on Sam Lake and Remedy, let's dive in to Max Payne. After the release of Death Rally, Remedy pitched 3 different game ideas to Scott Miller. They proposed a racing game, a free space-style shooter, and a 3D action game. That 3D game was initially called Dark Justice. It was designed as a third-person game, but instead of the traditional over-the-shoulder view, it had a top-down angle with the camera positioned slightly behind the player. According to Scott Miller, he stated, "We talked to Remedy about focusing on one game, which they eventually did. We selected the Dark Justice concept as one we were most interested in funding, but we wanted it changed to a true third-person game like Tomb Raider, but not with Tomb Raider's horrid camera system. And we wanted to develop another strong character that would be the foundation for a new gaming franchise, much like we done with Duke Nukem. The game would be called Max Payne." Now, the name Max was proposed by Miller. The last name Payne was chosen by a member of Remedy after marketing the game to be called Max Heat. According to Miller, "I came up with Max, but I couldn't think of a good last name. At one point, the best name we could think was Max Heat, and we spent over $20,000 trademarketing this name worldwide. Then someone from Remedy proposed Payne as the last name, and immediately we ditched Heat and spent another load of money trademarking Max Payne. Truly a perfect name." For this game, Sam Lake took on the role of lead writer, drawing heavy inspiration from film noir and crime fiction. As a result, the game felt like stepping into a dark, gritty detective movie. Remedy also wanted to push immersion further by incorporating real-life textures. Since the game was set in New York City, the team went on expeditions to capture the city in all its beauty and its grittiness. Development spanned several years, with 1996 and 1997 marketing a major technical leap from Quake 2 era 3D accelerators to more advanced graphics cards capable of near photorealistic visuals. Originally, the game had a more cartoony, hand-drawn aesthetic, but as technology advanced, Remedy saw an opportunity to enhance its realism. With these improvements, Lake pitched the idea of using graphic novel panels to tell the game's story. But there was one problem. Remedy was still a small studio with a limited budget, meaning they couldn't afford professional actors for these scenes. So they got creative. Instead of hiring outside talent, the team cast themselves as the game's characters. And who ended up as the face of Max Payne? None other than Sam Lake himself. According to one of the founders, Marcus Maki, he said, "With a graphic novel, the nuances are there in the head of the reader, and it would be much harder to reach that level with in-game or even pre-render cinematics. Now, you can do that stuff believably. Back then, it was a different ballgame. And there was the other reason: production." It's always fascinating to see how game developers tackle challenges, and Max Payne was no exception. Earlier, I mentioned how Remedy took inspiration from John Woo, and that influence became even more evident when listening to Programming the Ali Tervo. He explained, "John Woo had this action where all this trash was flying in the air. We just wanted that style. Lots of things had to be happening. With this vision in mind, the game was coming together nicely. At E3 1998, Max Payne made his debut with its very first trailer.
From point blank range, a suspect was seen leaving. It's after the shots had been fired, and according to
NYPD is currently in pursuit of Max Payne, a repeated felon
believed to be armed and extremely dangerous.
Originally set for a summer 1999 release, the team decided the game needed additional refinements. While Remedy remained secretive about development, E3 demos gave audiences a glimpse into how the game was evolving over time. At E3 1999, Max Payne returned with the updated trailer, now featuring Remedy's brand new Bullet logo. The new footage retained the core focus on combat, but showcased some fresh additions. One standout moment included Max using a sniper rifle to take down an unsuspecting goon.
Fight against the nightmare drug Valkyr took a turn for worse. As the
earlier today, the mayor stated that the drug Valkyr represents a clear and present danger. Was found brutally slain at the construction site of
the father had been shot repeatedly from point-blank range. A suspect was
Deadly in Pursuit of Max Payne, a repeat felon.
As development neared completion, Gathering and Developers was chosen as the game's publisher. Finally, on July 25, 2001, Max Payne launched for PC gamers. Interestingly, the game was initially intended to be a PC exclusive, but in April of 2001, 3D Realms announced that a PlayStation 2 version was in the works, being developed by Rockstar Canada and scheduled for a later release that year. And this right here is where Remedy and Rockstar officially crossed paths. The PS2 version of Max Payne hit shelves on December 11, 2001, marking the beginning of an enduring connection between the two companies. Here is a quick spoiler alert, as I'm about to tell the story behind Max Payne. Now, if you're not a fan of spoilers, please advance this video to the gameplay overview section as seen on the timeline below. Let's dive into this. The game's story opens up at the end, immediately pulling us into Max Payne's world as he recounts the events that led him to this moment. Standing on a ledge, he takes us back 3 years to his time as an NYPD officer in Hell's Kitchen. Back then, Max was a grounded, hard-working man dedicated to building a better future for his wife and daughter. But everything changed one fateful day. Returning home from work, he sensed something was off. His house was in disarray. He rushed upstairs. Chilling screams filled the air. Bursting through the door, he was met with a horrifying sight. A group of men, clearly high out of their minds, attacking him. Racing to his daughter's room, Max was confronted with an unthinkable tragedy. His daughter had been deleted. And in the bedroom, another devastating loss. His wife had suffered the same fate. The killers were under the influence of a mysterious drug called Valkyr, or V for short. With nothing left to lose, Max made a decision. He left the NYPD and transferred to the DEA, dedicating himself to uncovering the truth behind Valkyr. His mission led him deep undercover, infiltrating the Punchinello crime family to get the source of the drug that destroyed his life.
No!
That was 3 years ago. Everything ripped apart in a New York minute. The killer junkies had been high on a previously unknown designer drug, Valkyr, V. After the funeral, I told Alex I'd be transferring to the DEA. It took us 3 long years to get a break in the Valkyr case. Then, finally, 2 months ago, a dime dropper tipped us off that Jack Lupino, a mob boss in the Punchinello crime family, was trafficking. I went undercover, infiltrated the worst mafia family in New York.
One snowy night, while deep undercover, Max Payne receives an urgent call from BB, a fellow DEA agent who knows about his operation. BB informs him that there's critical intel on Jack Lupino and instructs him to meet Alex, another DEA contact at Roscoe Street Station. Arriving at the station, Max finds no signs of Alex. As he searches the area, he stumbles upon a grim discovery: bullet holes, blood stains, and a slain transit officer. Something is clearly wrong. As he presses forward, he realizes the station is crawling with mafia goons. After crashing a train into a barricaded area, he finds himself in an abandoned section of the station, untouched for decades. Putting the pieces together, Max suspects that something big is going down and wonders if this is why Alex wanted to meet. As he pushes deeper into the underground, he encounters more armed men securing the area. One passage is even welded shut and rigged to explode. Lacking a detonator, he continues searching and eventually stumbles upon a bank. To his shock, a robbery is in progress. A ringing phone call catches his attention. Answering cautiously, he hears the voice of NYPD Chief Jim Bravura. To avoid suspicion, Max refrains from revealing his identity. Investigating the vault, he discovers that the robbers are after Acer Corporation bonds. Finally, he manages to acquire a detonator, returns to the welded door, and blasts it open. Pushing forward, Max finally comes face to face with Alex. The two exchange words discussing the chaos unfolding around them, until in an instant, Alex is gunned down.
Hold it! Max! Jesus, you almost gave me a heart attack! I nearly shot you!
Alex, we're glad to see you.
What the hell's going on? There are more corpses here than at the city morgue!
It's an armed robbery, a tunnel job straight to the Roscoe Bank vault through the old station wall. Is this why... this is Lupino's gig?
This is Lupino's doing? Lupino's men? Really?
You sure know how to pick a place? Can you get through?
No, it's locked. We gotta get out of here. If it's Lupino, it's... Alex? Alex!
There was nothing I could do. He was dead. I could tell by the empty, accusing stare of his eyes.
Reeling from the loss, Max fights his way through even more hired guns before reaching the exit. Stepping outside, he mourns Alex's death and pieces together what happened. Jack Lupino set him up, the same man he was investigating and orchestrated this entire situation, framing Max for Alex's deletion. Knowing that Lupino's base of operations is a sleazy, crime-ridden motel, Max wastes no time heading there. Upon arrival, he encounters the Finito brothers. Playing it cool, he asks if Lupino is around, but the question immediately raises suspicion. The brothers see right through him. Max is a cop, and that makes him a target. Acting fast, Max takes him out and finds a letter on the desk. The note mentions a V-deal spearheaded by Vinny Gagnetti. A number scribbled at the bottom, 313, becomes his next lead.
I'd met Lupino only once. The gangster ran all his rackets through his right-hand man, Vinny Gagnetti. Gagnetti was a high-strung whiner on the verge of breaking apart, like an overamped Energizer bunny. He had the brains to run the business, but he lacked the balls, always falling short, taking his frustration out on underage addicts and call girls.
The V deal goes down at your hotel. Jack's exact words, quote, "Vinny, you're in charge of this one," unquote. "Rico Muerte's coming to see it through. Anything goes wrong and everybody's gonna get dead. Goes double for you. Treat this guy real good. Anything he wants, you give him. Don't screw this up or you're finito, finitos."
A V deal meant added security, locked doors, and lots of nervous thugs with itchy trigger fingers. I'd seen nothing coming in, but that didn't mean it hadn't been there. Rico Muerte was a regular Kaiser Soze, a spook story told to keep the apes in line. 313. The Finitos had scribbled Muerte's room number on the note's margin.
Making his way through the hotel, Max overhears a radio broadcast discussing the events at Roscoe Street Station. He listens closely as the mayor declares the drug Valkyr a serious threat to New York City. Then he hears something that confirms his worst fears. His DA contact Alex was eliminated, and authorities have identified him as the prime suspect. The setup was complete. Pushing forward, Mac reaches room 313 and discovers a letter signed by Angelo Punchinello. The note is addressed to Rico Muerte, demanding that he repay his debts for past favors in Chicago. Punchinello requires Muerte's unique skills for a backup on a major deal. Continuing his search, Max stumbles upon another letter from an S worker, detailing strange interactions with an old hag who had been recording her clientele and using the tapes as payment for Valkyr. Following the trail, Max reaches an elevator leading deeper into the hotel's lower levels. There he finds an inside bar where Rico Muerte sits bragging about his exploits. At his side, the same S worker from the letter, both seemingly benefiting from her illicit activities. Max wastes no time. He takes down Muerte and the S worker before making his way out of the hotel. As he steps outside, chaos erupts. A sudden explosion rocks one of the hotel floors. A bomb detonates within Lupino's hotel. Max spots a vehicle speeding away, recognizing the driver as Vladimir Lim, the leader of the Russian mob.
Walk away, blow town. That would have been the smart thing to do. Guess I wasn't that smart. Lupino's tenement buildings were a seedy hangout for all kinds of sleaze. A liquor store, a pawn shop, a laundromat full of mobster bookies and loan sharks. The list went on. The how and why of it was a mystery to me, but they knew I was a cop. They knew I was coming, and they were going to get real trigger happy about it. I got to see Lupino's hangout all lit up. A bomb went off, turning snow into liquid gold. A pillar of fire lifted the remains of a car straight up into the air. The flames were highlighted on the hood of a black Mercedes-Benz as it coasted down the street real slow, as if the driver didn't have a worry in the world. I got a good look at the man riding shotgun. It was Vladimir, the head of the local Russian mob, the fly in Don Punchinello's soup. The ringing in my ears was the sound of a mob war being waged.
Before Max can process the situation, another bomb explodes in a nearby building. This time, it's Jack Lupino's suite. Someone is sending Lupino a message. Determined to uncover the truth, Max enters the bombed-out building. As he navigates the wreckage, a phone rings. Answering cautiously, he finds himself speaking to Alfred Wooden. The mysterious caller warns Max that the cops are closing in and promises to contact him soon again. Outside, Chief Barura and the NYPD demand that Payne surrender immediately. Unwilling to comply, Max presses on. Inside the building, he discovers a letter from Vinny Gagnetti, in which Gagnetti mocks the Russians, claiming they wouldn't dare make a move against the Punchinello family. The irony isn't lost on Max. This letter was clearly written before the explosions. Navigating through the ruined hotel, Max finds out that the bombs have destroyed all access to Lupino's office. With the stairwells obliterated, he turns to the rooftops for an alternate path. Using quick thinking, he manipulates a guard into helping him reach an elevator that takes him upstairs. From there, he catches a news broadcast detailing the chaos that has unfolded across the city. After taking in the latest developments, Max continues his rooftop pursuit until he finally comes face to face with Vinny Gagnetti in his office.
Vinny Gagnetti, just the man I've been killing to see.
Payne? Freaking fed! I knew from day one there was something screwy about you. What do you think you're doing? You're a freaking cop. You ain't got squad on us. You can't just come in here waving your piece like it meant something. Yeah! Oh my God! Oh God, you shot me! Ah! You're dead, Payne! What the hell are you waiting for, you apes? Kill him! Kill him!
With pleasure, boss.
Gagnetti bailed. I made like Chow Yun Fat.
As soon as Max corners Vinny Gagnetti, the coward bolts, leaving his goons behind to slow Max down. Cutting through them with ease, Max finds an unfinished letter to Angelo Punchinello. The letter reveals that Jack Lupino had completely lost his mind and his men were terrified of him. Determined to get answers, Max chases after Gagnetti. The pursuit leads them to a moving train where Max keeps up despite dodging gunfire. Eventually, both men jump off, continuing their chase into a nearby building. Max fights his way downstairs, mowing through more hired muscle before emerging into a dimly lit alleyway. There, he finally catches up to Gagnetti. With nowhere left to run, the wounded gangster caves, spilling the truth. Lupino is hiding out at the nightclub Ragnarok.
Gagnetti ran out of steam in a dead-end alley with steam boiling out of the sewer grates like all the fires of hell were burning high beneath us. It was shakedown time. Where's Lupino?
Screw you!
Bad start, Vinny.
Ah! Police brutality!
I rate pretty high on that.
You can't just hurt me in cold blood?
Just keep telling yourself that. Listen good, Candyman. I'm not gonna be anybody's fall guy. I want to know where your boss is hiding. There was no glory in this. I hadn't asked for this crap. Trouble had come to me in big dark swarms. The good and the just were like gold dust in the city. I had no illusions. I was not one of them. I was no hero. Just me and the gun and the crook. My options had decreased to a singular course.
I'll tell you, just don't hurt me no more. Lupino's at Ragnarok, the nightclub. Book me, take me, hold me to the freaking jail, just don't hurt me.
Your rights will be ready at your funeral.
Armed with this new information, Max makes his way to Ragnarok. fully prepared to end Lupino's reign of terror. Inside, the nightclub is crawling with goons, but Max cuts through them as he explores the eerie venue. The deeper he goes, the more unsettling it becomes. Pentagrams, occult books, witchcraft paraphernalia, and Ouija boards are scattered across the tables. Max pieces together Lupino hadn't just lost his mind, he had embraced Satanism. Pressing on, Max finds himself in Lupino's inner sanctum. Among the disturbing relics, he discovers a threatening letter from Punchinello, warning Lupino to get his act together or else he'd send the trio after him. But what stands out the most are Lupino's own writings, ramblings filled with demons, dark gods, and blood rituals. At the center of it all, Max stumbles upon something truly chilling. 3 bodies seemingly sacrificed in a ritual. Before he can react, Lupino's deranged screams echo the room. Suddenly, Lupino emerges from behind curtains. His wild eyes, erratic movements, and superhuman aggression confirm what Max already suspected. He's completely strung out on Valkyr. A brutal fight ensues, but in the end, Max puts Lupino down for good. Just as he catches his breath, a woman named Mona Sax appears. She introduces herself as Lisa Punchinello's twin sister and reveals something shocking. Lupino couldn't have framed Max. In his delusional state, he barely had control over his own actions, let alone putting together an intricate setup. Before Max can process it all, Mona offers him a drink, but something's off. As soon as he takes a sip, a burning sensation courses through his body. It's been spiked with Valkyr.
Lisa Punchinello was the Don's wife.
Mona Sax, Lisa's evil twin.
Your safety's off, evil twin. You might hurt someone with that gun of yours.
Lisa's the damsel in distress. I'm the professional. I'd blow you away without batting an eye.
Sure, and you can check out my credentials splattered all over this joint.
Jack couldn't have framed you, not the state he was in. We're after the same slime bag. Angelo Punchinello's the one who murdered your friend and framed you with it.
You know this for a fact.
I've got my sources.
I don't have a clue these days. I just shoot them as they come. Who put a contract on the Archfiend?
This one's mine. I hate the guts of that sadistic wife-beater. Why not pool our bullets for this one?
I thought you'd never ask. My finger was starting to twitch.
How do you like your whiskey?
I'm easy, as long as you don't try to slip me a Mickey.
You're a real angel, Max.
It was good stuff. Tasted sweet as honey going down.
Nothing personal. Can't risk you going berserk and getting Lisa killed.
Max spirals into a nightmarish hallucination. He hears the cries of his daughter, the sobs of his wife, the memories of that fateful day replay in his mind like a twisted fever dream. When he finally wakes, reality crashes down on him. He's back in the bowels of the hotel tied to a chair with Frankie the Bat Niagara looming over him. Frankie delivers a brutal beating, savoring every hit before stepping away for a drink. With no time to waste, Mac rocks the chair back and forth until he finally breaks free. Wasting no time, he grabs Frankie's bat and fights his way out, finding an elevator that takes him back outside. Returning to the hotel, Max discovers that the cops have already begun investigating the crime scene. While sneaking inside, he overhears a goon on the phone discussing both Mona and Max. Apparently, Mona had attempted to take out Punchinello but got caught in the process. Then, something even more concerning. He hears mention of the trio, the same name that appeared in Punchinello's warning to Lupino. Whoever they were bad news. As Max listens to a radio broadcast, he hears a final twist. The public believes that he has been eliminated. The events at Ragnarok had led many to assume that he didn't make it out alive.
The fact remains that all the victims so far identified in the Ragnarok shooting have been known criminals, many of whom had large doses of V in their blood. Reliable sources say that Max Payne was also among those killed, although no body has been recovered at this time.
Reliable sources. That meant somebody thought the Mafia had me, didn't want the cops snooping around anymore. The body would be delivered to them barely recognizable. Case closed. Don Punchinello had the power to be that reliable source, which was no news. But his news was old news. Framing me hadn't been enough. Don Punchinello had put a hit on me. He wanted me dead, and it had been important enough for him to give written instructions to Frankie about it.
Max Payne should die like a dog for the trouble he's caused. Frankie, I know I can trust you to give this matter the dedication it needs.
As Max storms into the bar, he finds Frankie the Bat Niagara enjoying a beer, completely unaware of what's coming. Max decides to settle things the old-fashioned way, greeting Frankie, face to bat. A brutal fight breaks out as Frankie and his goons try to take Max down, but they never stood a chance. After wiping out everyone inside, Max leaves the hotel, only to notice something suspicious. He's been tailed by a big black Mercedes, the same car he saw at the explosion earlier. Before he can react, the car cuts him off, and out steps Vladimir Lim, a high-ranking player in the Russian mob. Instead of a fight, Vladimir offers Max a deal he can't refuse. If Max reroutes a shipment at the docks, Vladimir will help him in his war against Punchinello.
I spotted the tail as soon as I left the hotel. A big black Mercedes. I'd seen the car before. That time it had heralded impressive explosions. Vladimir was back.
Bang! You're dead, Max Payne.
I might have laughed if I remembered how. What's this supposed to be? Cops and robbers? Look, you want something with me? Get in line.
Peace, man. Relax. You know you are a real news item. Armed and dangerous. I am going to make you an offer you can't refuse. I've always wanted to say that.
It's a bum rap. I've been framed.
Well, that's a moot point. Whatever you did or did not do, I'm sure you had good reason for doing it. Want to hear me out?
I'm listening.
Punchinello messing with V is bad for business all around. But that's not all. There is this guy, Boris Dime, used to pull jobs for me. He's the captain of the cargo ship Charon. Now the bastard turncoat has gone over to the other side, Punchinello's. The ship's loaded with high-res hardware, guns, my business. If Punchinello gets hold of that cargo, he's won and I have lost. And you'll have your work cut out for you. If you want to get to Punchinello, you'll need heavy-duty persuaders. I am just the man to get them for you. Change the ship back under my flag, maybe pop 2 in the traitor Dime's head while you're at it. You'll get enough guns to start the apocalypse. You in or out?
Let's get this show on the road. Vladimir was one of those old-time bad guys with honor and morals, which made him almost one of the good guys. None of us was a saint.
Max heads to the port, cutting through waves of goons on his way to the ship. Once inside, he eliminates the crew, reroutes the vessel, and stumbles upon a weapon stockpile big enough to take down a small army. With the job done, Max meets up with Vladimir outside. The Russian thanks him, calling this the beginning of a beautiful friendship. With his next move in mind, Max devises a plan. If he wants to get to Punchinello, he has to make it seem like he wants to strike a deal. The mob boss takes the bait and tells Max to meet him at his restaurant in 1 hour. However, the moment Max steps inside, he realizes the truth. It's a trap. The entire restaurant is rigged to go up in flames. As the fire spreads, Max fights his way out, barely escaping before the building collapses. Forced into the city sewers, he navigates the underground tunnels, eventually making his way back to the surface. There, he runs into Vladimir again. This time, the Russian offers him a lift straight to Punchinello's manor.
Vlad had seen my smoke signals. The Mercedes was revving to go, almost drowning out the banshee wail of the sirens.
You coming? We'll drop you off at the Punchinello Manor.
Sounds good to me.
When this is over, look me up. I could use a professional like you.
I'll keep that in mind.
Max enters the manor through the back, following a gruesome trail of bodies. The pattern is clear. Mona Sax has already been through here. Inside, the place is crawling with Punchinello's best men, but Max doesn't slow down. Soon, he comes face to face with the first of the trio, Palati Providence. A gunfight breaks out and Providence falls like the rest. Pressing deeper into the mansion, Max heads upstairs and takes out Joe DePan Salem, the most skilled of the trio. As he pushes forward, Max enters Punchinello's bedroom, only to find Lisa Punchinello's lifeless body. The sight pulls him back to 3 years ago when he found the bodies of his wife and child. The past comes rushing back, but there's no time to dwell. He receives a phone call from Alfred Wooden, warning him that an armed helicopter has just landed on the grounds. Max presses on and finally eliminates the last member of the trio, Vince Mugano. Now there's only one man left, Punchinello himself. Hearing the cries for help, Max enters the office and finds Punchinello terrified out of his mind. The crime boss confesses he's nothing more than a puppet. A woman has been pulling the strings all along. Max doesn't buy it, but before he can do anything, men in suits, the killer suits to be exact, storm the office, gunning for both him and Punchinello. A violent shootout erupts, but Max puts them down. Then he finally comes face to face with the woman he's been hearing about all this time. Before he can react, she injects him with Valkyr. The world begins to blur as the nightmare from earlier comes back.
I could tell when I was outgunned. It was time to take another beating. The mystery witch was a real barracuda. Trouble on dagger heels, a smoking assault rifle in her hand, and an army of killer suits behind her.
How sweet. I get to kill two birds with one stone.
Sooner or later, it was going to catch up with you.
Mr. Payne, it's time to show you the benefits of my brew. Be a good boy now.
You'd find that Lady Luck was really a hooker. You were fresh out of cash.
He wakes up in another dream state, much like when Mona injected him. This time, the game takes a meta turn. Max finds himself wandering in circles in a surreal loop. At one moment, he hears a woman tell him that he's in a graphic novel. In the next, a voice insists he's in a PC game. As he spirals deeper into this nightmare, he comes face to face with himself, the version of him that was there the day his wife was deleted. He hears his wife's voice, recalling something that happened in her office that day, something about Vikings. He had dismissed it at the time, too caught up in his own routine to realize its significance. Then, just before waking up, he hears a woman's last words once again. Take me to Cold Steel. With no other leads, Max follows the trail to Cold Steel, finding an old military bunker underneath it. There, he uncovers the truth. Valkyr was originally a United States military project designed to enhance soldier stamina and morale. But the program was a failure, shut down after disappointing results. Digging deeper, Max learns something even more devastating. While working at the district attorney's office, his wife had accidentally discovered classified information about the project. To keep her silent, the woman unleashed her Valkyr test subjects on Max's home, setting in motion a tragedy that took his family from him 3 years ago. It was her all along.
You piece together a jigsaw, and the final picture is you finishing that same puzzle. A mad, green-eyed killer standing behind you. An urban legend come true. The Project Valhalla test subjects had been the mad junkies who had murdered my loved ones. The rest was simple body count math. It all pointed to her. Ms. Valkyr. The factory went up in a fiery inferno behind me. All my leads were dead, turned to smoke and dust. I'd lost my way. I hadn't slept in a million years.
After escaping the bunker, Payne gets a call from BB, who asks to meet him at a garage lot. It's here that Max begins to question whether Alex's murder was an inside job. The pieces start falling into place. BB must have sold him out and is now looking to tie up loose ends. When Max confronts BB, letting him know that he's onto him, a black car suddenly speeds onto the scene, nearly running him down. In the chaos, BB makes his escape, leading into a high-speed gun-blazing chase through the garage. As Payne fights his way through the last remnants of Punchinello's crew, the battle ends with BB lying dead at his feet. Then, another call. This time it's Alfred Wooden again. He invites Max to the Asgard building for a meeting. There, Payne meets Wooden's associates and learns the truth. Wooden is a part of a powerful secret organization known as the inner circle. It's here that Max finally puts the name to the woman who injected him, Nicole Horne. She wasn't just involved. She was Project Valhalla, the key figure behind it all. And more than that, she's also the president of Acer Corporation, the same company whose bonds were stolen during the bank heist. Wooden presents Max with the proposition: eliminate Horne and the inner circle will make his charges disappear. Before Payne can process it, the killer suits burst into the room, wiping out everyone in sight until Max notices something strange. Alfred Wooden, who was seemingly gunned down moments earlier, stands up. He had faked his own demise. Pushing forward, Payne infiltrates the inner circle's offices and stumbles upon yet another dark secret. The man Candy, the S-worker from earlier, had on tape was Wooden himself, and Horne had been using that footage to extort him into silence. On Wooden's desk, Max finds his next step, the blueprints to Acer Corporation's HQ. He escapes the building and plans his final assault.
Mine wasn't the most original approach to the problem. It wasn't as if it hadn't all been done before. An eye for an eye, the first principle of revenge. Old as dirt, still going strong. The cardinal rule in going after someone with an intention to kill was not to make it personal, which it almost always ended up being anyway. It did with me. I took my time, cruising around the city in the snow. There was no hurry. I knew what I had to do now. I took my time, thinking about it, building up the rage. When I was ready, I parked the stolen wheels at the front entrance of the Acer Corporation headquarters. Got out, got in, got cracking. I had a bullet with Nicole Horne's name on it. I had 10,000 bullets with the hag's name on them. She had ultra-high-tech security systems, enough mercenaries and weaponry to start World War III. There was no fear. New York disappeared behind a veil of snow. I had crossed the threshold. This was her domain, sleek and sexy and soulless, all glass and steel. A place of color-coded security keycards, metal detectors, and surveillance systems.
Payne storms into Acer headquarters, tearing through security guards and mercenaries as he fights his way to Nicole Horne. Along the way, he unexpectedly runs into Mona Sax once again, but when she refuses to take him out, Horne's men gun her down instead. She takes a bullet for Max, yet when the elevator doors reopen, she's mysteriously gone. Determined to finish this, Max ascends to the top of Acer Tower where he finally confronts Horne. She coldly admits that everything began when Max's wife uncovered the truth about Project Valkyr. Without remorse, she turns and flees to the rooftop, unleashing her remaining forces in a desperate attempt to stop him. But nothing is stopping Max now. Breaking through the last wave of mercenaries, he reaches the rooftop just in time to see Horne boarding a helicopter. Thinking she's escaped, she watches as Max raises his weapon, aiming not at her, but at the building's massive antenna. With a precise shot, he severs the wire, sending the antenna crashing down onto the helicopter. In an instant, Horne's escape turns into her demise, as the wreckage plummets from the rooftop, taking her with it and bringing the story of Max Payne to a close.
dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger. And then it was all over. The storm seemed to lose its frenzy. The ragged clouds gave way to the stars above.
Max Payne, this is Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD. We've got the building surrounded. Throw down your weapons and lie down with your hands behind your head.
A bit closer to heaven. The cops' voices were distant and muted.
Freeze! NYPD! Hold it right there!
My ghosts released me from their haunting. Down below, New York City glittered like diamonds on black velvet.
You gave us one hell of a ride. Take him down to Central Booking.
You heard the man.
Woden was there in the crowd, standing by the sidelines. It wouldn't be over till the man with the patch would say so. He'd say the right words. I knew he would. He'd better. Woden grinned smugly. It was the grin of a winner. That made two of us.
Now that we've explored the story, let's take a moment to analyze its deeper themes and enduring impact. One of the most prominent themes is the exploration of loss, pain, and redemption. Max's journey is fueled by the tragic loss of his family, which sets him on a relentless path of vengeance against those responsible. This arc resonates deeply with players as it delves into the emotional turmoil and psychological effects of trauma. The game's use of graphic novel-style storytelling and Max's internal monologues enhances the emotional depth, offering raw glimpses into his fractured psyche. The game also blurs the line between reality and illusion, challenging both Max and the player's perception of what is real. The nightmare levels serve as a prime example, where Max's subconscious manifests in surreal symbolic sequences. These dreamlike sections, inspired by psychoanalytic theories, visually represent Max's inner guilt and psychological torment over his family's deletion. This bending of reality and dreams adds complexity to the narrative, forcing players to question what is tangible and what is a projection of Max's haunted mind.
Max, something happened at the office today. A strange memo. Something about Vikings.
Honey, I gotta run. You can tell me all about it this evening.
Have a nice day, darling.
The bullet holes were rubies on her chest, blood glowing on her ivory skin. She was so beautiful. The killer was smiling. The flesh of fallen angels.
Another significant theme in Max Payne is the concept of narrative and reality, a recurring motif in the Remedy Entertainment universe. The game suggests that reality is, in many ways, shaped through storytelling, a theme later explored in other Remedy titles like Alan Wake and Control. By incorporating elements of Norse mythology, the game enriches its narrative with deeper symbolic meanings, adding to its layered storytelling and replay value. Building on Norse mythology, it plays such an impact on the story. One of the most notable examples is the character Alex Balder, Max's DEA partner whose death marks the beginning of Max's downfall. This mirrors the Norse myth of Balder, the god whose death signals the start of Ragnarok, also known as the end of the world. When looking at the game, where do we end at the end of part 1? Ragnarok nightclub. We are literally watching Norse mythology come together full circle. The game is filled with other Norse references, such as Project Valhalla and the Valkyr drug named after the Valkyries, who chose the slain in battle and carried them to Valhalla. The Acer Corporation is named after the pantheon of Norse gods. These elements weave a narrative that explores themes of fate, chaos, and the cynical nature of violence and destruction, all of which are central to Norse mythology, by the way. The inclusion of Norse mythology also serves to enhance the game's noir atmosphere. The use of mythological references adds layers, and symbolism allowing players to interpret the story on multiple levels. For example, the snowstorm that occurs during the game can be seen as a metaphor for the Fimbul winter, the great winter that precedes Ragnarok. Although the biggest influence on Max Payne's gameplay, John Woo films. His signature style of high-octane gunfights and slow-motion action played a crucial role in shaping the game's bullet time mechanic. Remedy Entertainment drew heavy inspiration from Woo's iconic Hong Kong action films, particularly Hard Boiled and The Better Tomorrow. In fact, one of the game's difficulty settings is even named Hard Boiled as a direct homage. Some moments in Max Payne wear this influence on their sleeve. Just take a look at this scene right here.
It's me. Open up. Let me in, quick.
Not so fast. The password. John Woo.
Come on. Okay, John Woo.
All right. Come right in.
Even Max himself acknowledges the connection, directly comparing himself to Chow Yun-fat, the actor synonymous with Woo's stylized action.
Yeah! Oh my god! Oh god, you shot me! Ah! You're dead, Payne! And what the hell are you waiting for, you apes? Kill him! Kill him!
With pleasure, boss.
Cogniti bailed. I made like Chow Yun-fat.
Overall, Max Payne offers a critique of the hard-boiled cop archetype, a staple of noir fiction. While Max's dry and cynical monologues align with the traditional noir protagonist, the game subverts expectations by portraying him as more than just a grizzled anti-hero. His emotional vulnerability and psychological scars make him a more complex and humanized figure, adding depth to his relentless pursuit of justice. This self-aware storytelling invites players to engage with Max Payne on a deeper level, appreciating not only his action-packed gameplay, but also its introspective take on classic detective tropes. Okay, now let's look into the characters of Max Payne, starting with Payne himself. Max Payne is a complex and deeply troubled character, driven by a mix of vengeance and guilt and a sense of responsibility. His life was shattered when his wife Michelle and their newborn daughter were brutally eliminated by drug addicts under the influence of Valkyr. This tragedy defined Max's journey, shaping his cynical personality and dry sense of humor, often expressed through his internal monologues, which offer insight into his emotional state and moral dilemmas. Beneath his tough exterior, Max is haunted by his past, struggling with self-blame and a lingering sense of purposelessness. His emotional turmoil is evident in the game's nightmare sequences, where he imagines himself as the murderer, reinforcing his overwhelming guilt. This self-destructive mindset fuels his reckless behavior as he throws himself into danger without hesitation, seemingly indifferent to his own survival. Throughout his narration, Max displays a level of introspection and self-awareness, acknowledging his flaws and the moral ambiguity of his actions. Max's personality is also shaped by his difficult upbringing, raised by an alcoholic mother and a traumatized Vietnam veteran father, both whom died when he was young. Max developed a cynical worldview and a tendency to push people away. These early experiences contribute to his emotional detachment and reluctance to form meaningful connections. James McAfee's voice acting was instrumental in bringing Max to life, capturing his emotional depth, dark humor, and a world-weary tone. Additionally, Sam Lake's motion capture and body acting played a key role in conveying Max's movements and expressions, further enhancing the game's gritty, noir-inspired storytelling.
We come to you now live from the crime scene.
Who is this?
Right back at you.
This is Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD. You are to cease your criminal activities and surrender immediately.
Sure thing, Jim. Me and the boys have been talking and everyone's real sorry. They'll never do it again.
Who the hell is this?
Being placed at the scene of a bank robbery wouldn't have tipped the odds in my favor.
Moving on to Michelle Payne. She was Max's wife and the mother of their daughter. Her significance in the story is profound, as her brutal deletion along with their child sets Max on his relentless path of vengeance. More than just a tragic backstory, Michelle represents the life Max lost, the happiness and stability that were ripped away from him in an instant. Michelle is portrayed as a loving and supportive partner, and her relationship with Max is depicted as deeply meaningful. She worked part-time at the district attorney's office, and her access to documents related to the Valkyr project unknowingly sealed her fate. This detail adds a tragic layer to her character. She wasn't just a victim of random violence, but of a larger conspiracy, making Max's pursuit of justice even more personal. Even after her death, Michelle's presence looms over Max, serving as a reminder of everything he's lost. Her memory haunts him throughout the game, reinforces inability to move on. Whether it's through nightmare sequences or Max's internal monologues, Michelle's influence is deeply felt, making her more than just a motivation. She's the very soul of Max's tragedy.
Max, something happened at the office today. A strange memo. Something about Vikings.
Honey, I gotta run. You can tell me all about it this evening.
Have a nice day, darling.
The bullet holes were rubies on her chest, blood glowing on her ivory skin. She was so beautiful. The killer was smiling.
The flesh of fallen angels.
Now let's look at Alfred Woden, a U.S. senator and a high-ranking member of the Inner Circle. Woden is a powerful yet enigmatic figure operating behind the scenes. His role in Max Payne is complex. While he presents himself as an ally, offering Max crucial information and guidance, his true motives remain shrouded in mystery. Throughout the game, he communicates with Max, primarily through telephone calls, warning him of impending dangers and steering him towards uncovering the truth behind his family's murder. Woden's significance extends beyond being just a plot driver. He embodies the corrupt elite, a shadowy figure pulling the strings from the background. His character reinforces the game's central themes of power, corruption, and manipulation, showcasing how the rich and influential control the events to suit their own agendas. His involvement in Project Valhalla and his rivalry with Nicole Horne serve as key drivers of the narrative, as he effectively manipulates Max into eliminating Horne, not out of justice, but to protect his own interests and keep the Inner Circle's activities hidden. Often referred to as One-Eyed Alfred, Woden's nickname adds to his mystique, symbolizing his secretive and calculating nature. While his actions are undeniably self-serving, his role in Max's journey cannot be overlooked. He represents the morally ambiguous figures who thrive in the shadows, proving that in Max Payne, justice is never black and white.
On screen, the so-called corpse of Alfred Woden stood up, miraculously waking from his dirt nap, looking smug among his dead pals. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I didn't know how he pulled it off, but it was a pretty slick way to get out of all his promises. Most of what he had said fit too well to be a load of crap.
Now let's take a look at the big bad of Max Payne, Nicole Horne. As the mastermind behind Valkyr, she is ruthless, calculating, and utterly devoid of empathy. Horne is responsible for the development and distribution of the designer drug that fuels much of the game's conflict, and her actions are driven by an insatiable hunger for power and wealth. Unlike Alfred Woden, who operates in the shadows, Horne takes a direct and brutal approach, including orchestrating the murder of Max's family to cover up Project Valhalla. Horne's departure from the Inner Circle set her on a path of unchecked ambition. She continued experimenting with Valkyr for her own gain, using the Punchinello crime family as her distribution network to flood the streets with the drug. Despite not being the traditional final boss, she is the true antagonist of the story, manipulating events and fueling Max's revenge quest. Her cold and calculating nature earned her the nickname the Hag, emphasizing both her remorseless personality and the way others fear her. In a fun behind-the-scenes fact, Horne was portrayed by Sam Lake's mother, meaning in a way, Max Payne is ultimately hunting down his own mother. It's just a fun fact that I thought might have been cool to add.
No begging, no bribes. She knew better. Honor among killers. We who were about to die. Both of us knew how this would end. In pain and suffering.
All this because your wife stuck her nose into things that were none of her business.
The cops were coming to take me away. The sirens were like a bad conscience I couldn't shake.
It's ridiculous you've made it this far. You won't be alive when they get here.
Now, let's talk about the man who was hunting Max down. Jim Bravura. As the deputy police chief of the NYPD, Bravura serves as Max's superior and the main law enforcement figure pushing him throughout the game. While his character isn't deeply explored in this one, he is depicted as a strict but fair leader who is aware of Max's undercover work. However, when Max becomes a fugitive, Bravura is relentless in his pursuit, seeing him as a rogue cop rather than a man seeking justice. Bravura's presence in the story is mostly indirect. He doesn't have a major role in this game, nor is he heavily featured in the game's graphic novel style cutscenes. Instead, his character is referenced through Max's monologues and occasional interactions with other officers. As a representative of the NYPD, he embodies the law and order perspective, contrasting Max's personal vendetta with the more traditional view of justice. Despite his tough stance, he isn't a villain, and his pursuit of Max is more about upholding the law than personal malice.
Cops arrived, sirens singing in the off-key harmony of a manic-depressive choir. I had a few minutes while the SWAT team would go through their usual routine. By the time they busted in, I needed to be long gone.
Max Payne, this is Deputy Chief Jim Bravura from the NYPD. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands above your head.
Now, let's talk about the biggest pushover in the game, Vinny Gagnetti. As Jack Lupino's right-hand man, Vinny plays a key role in the game, but not exactly as a fearsome adversary. Instead, he serves as a lead that Max relentlessly tracks down in his quest for revenge. Max pushes Vinny across rooftops, train tracks, and alleyways, eventually catching up to him and forcing out crucial information about Lupino and the Valkyr drug before leaving him bleeding in the snow. Vinny's personality is what makes him stand out. He tries to act tough, but his whiny demeanor, Brooklyn accent, and obsession with comic books make him come off as more of a cartoonish loudmouth than a real threat. He provides some much-needed comic relief in an otherwise grim and serious story. Despite working closely with Lupino, Vinny isn't much of a challenge. He's more of an annoyance than a true villain. His over-the-top panic and desperate attempts to escape Max's wrath makes his chase sequence one of the game's most memorable moments.
Vinny Gagnetti, just the man I've been killing to see.
Payne? Freaking Fed! I knew from day one there was something screwy about you. What do you think you're doing? You're a freaking cop. You ain't got squad on us. You can't just come in here waving your piece like it meant something.
Yeah! Oh my God! Oh God, you shot me! Ah! You're dead, Payne! What the hell are you waiting for, you apes? Kill him! Kill him!
With pleasure, boss.
Gagnetti bailed. I made like Chow Yun Fat.
Now let's talk about Frankie the Bat Niagara, a guy who loves violence almost as much as he loves Captain Baseball Bat Boy. Frankie is a brutal enforcer known for his sadistic tendencies and signature weapon, a baseball bat, which he uses to inflict pain on his victims. Despite his menacing nature, his obsession with a cartoon superhero adds a layer of dark humor and irony to his character, making him one of Max Payne's more eccentric antagonists. Frankie's run-in with Max is a defining moment as he captures and tortures him, leaving Max at a severe disadvantage. But as always, Max turns the tables, managing to break free and take revenge. This confrontation showcases Max's determination and resilience, reinforcing the game's gritty, noirish atmosphere. Frankie may be a brutal thug, but he's also a perfect example of the game's balance between dark storytelling and twisted humor. His over-the-top persona fits right into Max Payne's world, making him a memorable piece of the puzzle in Max's relentless quest for justice.
I woke up in a bad dream. My head felt 2 sizes too small for my brain.
Max Payne, I envy your name.
And the killer was smiling.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Frankie the Bat Niagara.
Niagara, as in you cry a lot? He had a baseball bat and I was tied to a chair. Pissing him off was the smart thing to do.
Nothing wrong with a little laugh now and then. Take me, for example. I love to watch cartoons. Cartoon violence is a fascinating thing. Let's take a break. I need to take a leak and maybe grab a cold one at the bar. Don't worry. I'll be back to finish this off. And then, it's checkout time.
You play, you pay, you bastard. He swaggered out, and the door clanged shut behind him, locks clicking into place.
Now let's take a trip to the slums and talk about Rico Muerte, a cold-blooded hitman brought to New York to oversee a major Valkyr drug deal. His presence in Max Payne escalates the stakes, reinforcing the danger and chaos of the criminal underworld that Max is tearing through. Rico is ruthless, a man who will eliminate anyone in his way without hesitation. He perfectly represents the violent nature of organized crime, making him a fitting roadblock in Max's quest for revenge. Their showdown takes place in a hotel bar where Max is looking for leads on Jack Lupino and the Punchinello crime family. This encounter highlights Max's relentless determination and cunning as he fights his way through hostile territory to get closer to the truth. Rico might not be the biggest name in the criminal underworld, but he plays a key role in shaping Max Payne's intense, high-stakes atmosphere.
Two mad dog killers, ready to murder each other. They step into the next room, and I'm thinking, now they're gonna do it. But no. They sit down in front of a TV and solve their differences with the Kung Fu fighting video game. I tell you, Candy, I was so depressed, I strangled them both with the video game cables.
Oh, Rico, you're so bad.
I am, ain't I?
Rico Muerte, big-time hustler.
Who the hell?
It's that cop.
Muerte went for his gun.
Now let's talk about Jack Lupino, the man who lost his mind. A former Marine, Lupino was one of Acer's successful test subjects for Valkyr, but the drug's effects pushed him into complete madness. As a key figure in the Punchinello crime family, he plays a major role in the Valkyr trade, ruling over his operation from the Ragnarok nightclub, a twisted den of occult imagery and Norse mythology references. Lupino's obsession with Norse gods and dark rituals adds to Max's surreal and nightmarish atmosphere, making him one of the gang's most memorable and unsettling antagonists. His dialogue is filled with cryptic, almost prophetic ramblings, reinforcing how far gone he really is. The confrontation at Ragnarok is a climactic moment, showcasing how dangerous and unpredictable Lupino has become. But beyond being just an unhinged villain, he serves as a symbol of Valkyr's destruction, a warning of what happens to those who fall too deep into his grasp. Taking him down is more than just revenge. It's a stepping stone in Max's journey, pushing him further into the dark conspiracy surrounding his family's death.
I had known there'd have to be a catch in it somewhere, and this one was the Empire State Building of catches. Lupino was pumped up and dying to go 15 rounds with a mutant alligator. And then he started this spooky monkey talk, straight from a bad dream. Mine.
I have tasted the flesh of fallen angels. I've tasted the devil's green blood. It runs in my veins. I've seen beyond the world of skin, the architecture of blood and bow and arrow. Death is coming! She is coming, and hell follows with her. This is the twilight winter. I am ready to be her son. Her time is now, and all who stand in her way must die!
Now, let's talk about the woman of mystery herself, Mona Sax. A skilled assassin with a personal vendetta, Mona is a twin sister of Lisa Punchinello, the abused wife of mob boss Angelo Punchinello. Her hatred for Angelo fuels her mission to eliminate him, making her involvement in the game deeply personal rather than just another job. Initially hired by Horne to take out the Don, who had started going rogue, Mona's path crosses with Payne after she takes down Jack Lupino at Ragnarok. She gives Max crucial information about Punchinello's role in the Valkyrie trade, but then betrays him, drugging him to keep him from interfering. Whether she's protecting him, using him, or both is left ambiguous, fitting for a classic femme fatale. Mona is strong, independent, and enigmatic, embodying the mystique of noir anti-heroines. She vanishes from the story shortly after getting shot in the head by mercenaries, but with her body mysteriously disappearing, her quote-unquote death leaves more questions than answers.
Mona, looking good.
Max, we gotta stop meeting like this.
It will be a cold day in hell before I let a narc cop stop me. Miss Sax, do your job.
Relax, Max. You're a nice guy. I don't kill nice guys.
You're not bad yourself.
It was different when Horne wanted Punchinello dead. To cut her ties to the Mafia, he deserved to die.
The same goes with her. She's the bad guy here. Her sister was whispering to her in my favor. I knew the appetites of ghosts intimately. They hungered for revenge.
No!
A gunshot boomed and she fell down in slow motion. She was a nice girl, not really a stone-cold killer. And now she was stone-cold dead. Like religious fanatics or loyal samurai, Horne's private army was coming at me.
Now let's talk about the unsung hero of the game, Vladimir Lim. As the leader of the Russian mob in New York City, Vlad is locked into a brutal turf war with the Punchinello crime family. At first, he seems like just another player in the city's endless power struggles, but there's more than meets the eye. Unlike the chaotic and unhinged Jack Lupino, Vlad is cool, calculated, and pragmatic. He didn't start the war with the Punchinellos. They attacked his weapon shipments first, forcing his hand. After seeing Max single-handedly dismantle the Punchinello family, Vlad recognizes an opportunity. Instead of being an enemy, he extends a truce, offering Max heavy firepower in exchange for eliminating a traitorous lieutenant who switched sides. This alliance is a turning point in the game, showing Vlad's strategic mindset. He doesn't let pride get in the way of survival and power. While his role in this game is limited, it plants the seeds for major involvement in other games, where his relationship with Max may or may not take a darker turn.
Anything you need?
Check.
I owe you. Anything you need.
This is my solo. When I'm through, Punchinello won't be anybody's problem anymore.
Clear as vodka. But anytime you get between a rock and a hard place, just whistle. This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
You really get a bang out of this big-time gangster act, don't you?
At its core, Max Payne revolutionized third-person shooters with his innovative bullet time mechanic, a feature that allowed players to slow down time during intense gunfights, while still aiming and reacting in real time. Inspired by Hong Kong action films and The Matrix, this mechanic turned every encounter into a cinematic spectacle, letting players dodge bullets midair and chain stylish kills together with precise timing. Max starts the game armed with a simple 9mm Beretta, but as players progress, they gain access to a variety of weapons, including submachine guns, shotguns, and explosives. Dual-wielding pistols or Uzis increases firepower at the cost of higher ammo consumption, adding a layer of risk-reward to combat. The game's health system relies on painkillers. Scattered throughout the levels or taken from fallen enemies, this creates a strategic element forcing players to manage their limited supply, especially on higher difficulties where enemies deal more damage. On another note, players are only allowed to contain 8 painkillers at a time. Moving on, while Max features scripted enemy AI, foes exhibit behaviors like taking cover, flanking, or retreating when overwhelmed. The game's linear progression is occasionally broken up with platforming sections and light puzzle solving, such as navigating ledges or unlocking doors to proceed. And as we look at the difficulty, Max Payne offers multiple difficulty levels, each providing unique challenges. Fugitive is the first one, the default difficulty, offering a balanced experience. Then we make our way to Hard Boiled, where enemies hit harder and resources are scarcer. Then you have Dead on Arrival, which limits the player to 7 saves per chapter, adding to the game's tension. Then you have the New York Minute, a time-based mode where players must clear levels before the clock runs out. What sets Max Payne apart from his narrative presentation, instead of traditional cutscenes, the story unfolds through Max's internal monologues and graphic novel-style interludes, reinforcing the game's noir atmosphere. These moments not only drive the plot, but also deepen the player's connection to Max's tragic journey, making Max Payne a standout in both gameplay and storytelling. Okay, so Max Payne originally came out for Windows on July 25th, 2001, and was published by a gathering of developers. The PC port of Max Payne was well received for its time, offering superior graphics and performance compared to console versions. However, it faced challenges running on modern systems due to compatibility issues with newer hardware and operating systems. The game was one of the first to utilize hardware TL, transform clipping and lighting, which significantly improved its visual quality on PCs equipped with compatible graphics card like the GeForce or the TNT series. One of the most notable differences in the PC port was its ability to handle higher resolutions and more detailed graphics compared to console versions. However, this advantage has become less pronounced over time as the game's compatibility issues have become more apparent. Modern PCs often require additional patches and fixes to run the game smoothly, including widescreen support and fixes for sound issues or crashes. These patches are not exclusive to the PC port, but are necessary due to the game's age and evolution of PC hardware. The next port is for the Sony PlayStation 2, which was published by Rockstar Games. This version of Max Payne released on December 11, 2001 for North American markets and January 11, 2002 for European markets. The PS2 port was widely regarded as the weakest version of the game compared to its counterparts. The primary issues with the PS2 version included downgraded textures and resolution, which significantly impacted gameplay, particularly in identifying hazards like trap bombs. The game's overall brightness was also notably low, making navigation through darker levels challenging without adjusting the TV settings. Additionally, the movement controls were criticized for being slippery and frustrating, especially in platforming sections. Another significant drawback of the PS2 version was its poor performance. The frame rate was generally low, often dropping below 20 frames per second during intense action sequences, which made the game nearly unplayable at times. The frequent loading screens were also a major issue, disrupting the flow of the game and causing frustration when players had to restart levels after dying. These technical issues, combined with the lack of visual fidelity compared to other versions, made the PS2 port less enjoyable for players. The differences in the PS2 version were largely due to the hardware limitations. To accommodate the PS2 32 megabytes of RAM, the game's levels were split into smaller sections, leading to more frequent loading screens and a disjointed experience. While the game's controls translated well to the DualShock controller, the overall experience was marred by technical issues and visual downgrades. The changes were exclusive to the PS2 version due to its hardware constraints, making it distinct from the smoother and visually superior versions. The next port to talk about is the Xbox port. Now, this version of the game was also published by Rockstar Games and was released on December 18, 2001 for North American markets and March 14, 2002 for European markets. The Xbox port was generally considered to be a solid version of the game, though it had some issues. The game's visuals were praised for their fluidity and smoothness. even on standard television screens, surpassing the PS2 version in terms of graphic quality. However, the Xbox version suffered from similar problems as the PS2 version, such as levels being split into smaller sections due to memory constraints. This resulted in more frequent loading screens and a more linear experience, as players were often unable to backtrack due to locked doors. One of the unique aspects of the Xbox version was its control scheme. The game's controls were fully customizable, which made them surprisingly easy to use on the standard Xbox gamepad. Additionally, the Xbox version retained features like autosaves and quick save similar to the PC version, which was not the case with the PS2 version. The Xbox version also used a different graphics novel font and menu backgrounds compared to other platforms. Despite these minor differences, the Xbox port did not significantly diverge from the PC version in terms of gameplay and content. In terms of exclusive differences, the Xbox version did not offer any major gameplay or narrative changes compared to other platforms. However, the technical implementation and presentation were distinct due to the console's hardware capabilities. The Xbox version's ability to handle smooth graphics and sound, particularly with the 5.1 speaker system, was a notable advantage over the PS2 version. Overall, while the Xbox port of Max Payne wasn't perfect, it provided a more polished experience than the PS2 version, though it still lacked the polished freedom of the PC version. The next port was Mac, which dropped on July 16, 2002, and was developed by Westlake Interactive and published by Microsoft. In terms of differences, the Mac OS version did not offer any exclusive gameplay narrative features compared to other platforms. However, it did use OpenGL for rendering, which was different from the Direct 3D used in Windows versions. This change was necessary to accommodate the Mac's graphics architecture. Additionally, the Mac version requires specific system configurations to run optimally, which sometimes led to compatibility issues with newer Mac OS systems. Over time, running Max Payne on modern Macs has become more complex due to changes in Mac OS, requiring the use of compatibility layers or wrappers like Wine to function properly. The last port to talk about is the Game Boy Advance, which dropped on December 16, 2003 for North American markets and March 14, 2004 for European markets. This was a unique adaptation of the original game. Developed by Mobius Entertainment, which will later become Rockstar Leeds, we'll get to that later, this version significantly diverged from the PC, Xbox, and PS2 versions by adopting an isometric perspective. Instead of the 3D person shooter gameplay found in other versions, the Game Boy Advance port used sprite graphics, which allowed it to run on the less powerful handheld console. Despite these changes, the game retained many of the original's core elements, including the use of bullet time and the graphic novel-style storytelling with voiceovers. One of the most notable differences in the Game Boy Advance version was its approach to storytelling and gameplay. While it followed the same narrative as the original, some levels were omitted to accommodate the Game Boy Advance's limitations. The isometric perspective allowed for a different style of gameplay, focusing more on strategic positioning and timing rather than the fast-paced action seen in other versions. The inclusion of voice acting and graphic novel sections was impressive for a Game Boy Advance game, adding depth to the storytelling despite the technical constraints. Max Payne received overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics upon its release in 2001. The game was praised for its exciting gunplay, innovative use of bullet time mechanics, and a noir storytelling, which added a cinematic feel to the gameplay. Critics appreciated the game's atmospheric presentation, with many noting its ability to immerse players in a gritty, crime-ridden New York City. The narrative, while sometimes criticized for being predictable and cliched, was generally well received for its emotional impact, particularly conveying Max's pain and vengeance. However, some critics were directed at the game's linear level design and short length, Many viewers noted that the game could be completed in as little as 5 to 10 hours, which was seen as a drawback for some players seeking more extensive gameplay. Additionally, the narration, while praised for its depth and metaphors, was occasionally criticized for being overly abundant and heavy-handed. Despite these criticisms, Max Payne won numerous awards, including a BAFTA award for Best PC Game in 2001, and is widely regarded as one of the greatest games ever made. The game's success was not limited to its initial release. It maintained a strong reputation over the years. Even decades later, Max Payne remains a beloved title among gamers, with many still recommending it for its engaging gameplay and storytelling. The game's influence on the action genre is evident, and its innovative mechanics have been influential in shaping future games. Overall, Max Payne was well received by critics and players alike, praised for its unique blend of action and narrative, despite some minor drawbacks in design length. Now, when looking at the average fan, they had a love-hate relationship with Max Payne. Some reviewers' experience highlights several aspects that would resonate with many players. There's a clear appreciation for the game's unique elements, such as a bullet time mechanic and the gritty Noir experience, yet there are also frustrations with aspects like the challenging difficulty and occasional cheapness. The admiration for Max Payne as a character and the overall plot suggest that fans were drawn in by the game's storytelling, even if supporting characters felt underdeveloped. The graphic novel-style cutscenes and Jane McAfee's voice acting were definite highlights. On the other hand, issues like the game's age showing through the graphics and inconsistent music usage likely detracted from the overall experience. The need to tweak compatibility settings for modern systems will also be a point of annoyance for many. Ultimately, many reviewers suggest that fans would appreciate Max Payne for its innovative gameplay and distinctive atmosphere, but they will also have to tolerate some of the frustrating elements. So, average fans may have mixed feelings ranging from frustration with platforming sections and cheap enemy tactics to enjoyment of shot dodging and dual wielding, likely mirror the experiences of many players who found the game both rewarding and challenging. So, let me be real with you. I played Max Payne years ago when I bought it on the PS3 store, and my first reaction, I thought it was funny looking. I thought it was funny looking at Sam Lake's face. At the time, I was younger, more judgmental, and I found the game kind of humorous. I played it through the first level, shrugged it off as outdated, and moved on to something else. But now, I'm here to say I was wrong. This game is pretty good. It's not perfect, and I know that now because it started as a PC game before being ported over to consoles. But playing it today, as a mature gamer, I can confidently say I had a great time. I appreciate Max's one-liners, the clever similes and metaphors, and now I fully understand why people appreciate Sam Lake, the guy whose goofy face became Max Payne. But no joke, this game delivers. That said, the story demands your full attention. On your first playthrough, you might lose track of who you're chasing and why, which makes the pacing feel a little uneven at times. But if you stay engaged, you'll appreciate the layers of mystery and noir storytelling. And while the PS2 version was seen as the inferior way to play, I still found it fun. It all comes down to preference. The gritty, dark atmosphere is another highlight. It pulls you in. Every gunfight feels intense. And speaking of combat, let's talk about bullet time. If you just wanted to zone out and mow down enemies, this game had you covered. The bullet time mechanic felt revolutionary at the time, especially with the late 90s and early 2000s obsession with slow motion action. After The Matrix, bullet time became the coolest thing in the world, and Max Payne lets you live that fantasy. At times, the game feels less like a John Woo movie and more like The Matrix. You can dodge bullets in an instant and always feel like you had a way out of a bad situation. As long as you had bullet time, you were never truly dead. Now, my biggest gripe, the nightmare sequences when you're following that thin blood trail in complete darkness was a pain. And if you missed your step, you'd fail. That was frustrating. But I'll give the game credit. The meta elements in Max Payne's Second Nightmare, where he's going through circles with the same phone call and note, reminded me of Silent Hill's PT. Honestly, I wish they had expanded that idea and made escaping a puzzle instead of just an endurance test. Just think about it. Aside from that, what real negatives can I say? None. Really. And in 2025, with how much people love John Wick, this game feels like playing as John Wick. By the time you beat it, you feel unstoppable. Now, one thing I didn't bring up, but I'm bring up here, is the upcoming remake. I'm interested, but I do have one gripe. With James McCarthy gone, I do have some doubts about the game. His voice was synonymous with Max Payne, just like David Hayter with Solid Snake. If they could pull it off, I'll be there for it, but it's going to be emotional hearing someone else in the role. So if you never played Max Payne, I got one question for you. Do you love action movies? If the answer is yes, play this game. Learn from my younger mistakes. There's a worthwhile experience waiting for you. If you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like. It really helps with the algorithm and brings more people to the channel. Next week, we're back with the Mortal Kombat takeover covering Mortal Kombat 4. And in 2 weeks, we return to the Rockstar takeover with Grand Theft Auto Vice City. If that sounds like your kind of speed, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're ready when the videos drop. This is the Retro Phantom, signing out.